Hello, I'm David, Catherine Mielke's other half for 49 years. You'll notice I didn't say better half. I never qualified for that. Kathy and I didn't quite make the 6% club. That's the percentage of marriages with the same two people that last 50 years. But we got close, and that's good enough. I'm making this video for two reasons. First, for those who couldn't make it to this memorial gathering, and second, to relate a few facts about Kathy that are not widely known. It was 1967. We met quite by accident in Professor Green's conducting class at the University of Michigan School of Music. I was sitting next to the podium when this cute blonde was a little too exuberant with her baton on the downbeat of Beethoven's Fifth. She nicked me on the shoulder. It didn't draw blood, but it did draw my interest. Embarrassed, Kathy apologized. Seeing an opening, I asked her on a date. The first led to another and another. She told me I had a cute butt. I told her she had a cute, well, everything. The rest, as they say, is history. In 1995, as past president of the Boca Raton Rotary Club, I had the honor and pleasure of introducing Dr. Carl Sagan for a fundraising event at the Florida Atlantic University Auditorium. For those of you who don't know or remember who he was, during the 1980s and 90s, Carl Sagan was perhaps the foremost communicator of astronomy and astrophysics, as well as creator of a popular public television program called Cosmos, which explored the universe with its billions and billions of stars and mankind's relation to it. Even better, I had a precious 10 minutes or so with him, privately, backstage, before his presentation was to begin. Upon introducing myself, I had barely uttered my first welcoming platitude when he interrupted me. I just came from the funeral of my 14-year-old niece, he said. While everyone else was in tears, mourning the loss of this young girl with such a charming personality and unlimited potential, I found myself celebrating her loving and cheerful spirit, however short her time was among us. Her loss made me realize that the amount of time we have knowing someone isn't the most important factor. It's their spirit that matters. So instead of mourning her loss, I choose to celebrate her life. Perhaps it was his fame or distinctive delivery that I had seen so often on TV, but the gist of his words have remained with me all these years. Each of you who came today have good memories of Kathy, or you wouldn't be here. The reason I bring up that meeting with Carl Sagan is to ask every one of you not to mourn her loss, but rather celebrate her spirit. And what a spirit she had! Very few of us have the innate ability to attract the friendship of others without even trying. Kathy was one of the rare souls who had the capacity to bring out the better angels from all who got to know her, even strangers. Years ago, the two of us were on a cruise. Walking to an evening seating for supper, Kathy asked me to wait while she went to the ladies' room. 2 minutes turned into 5, and I started to hear shrill cackling, which got louder by the second. Eventually, Kathy walked out. She was laughing hysterically, arm in arm, with a woman I had never seen before. They parted with a hug. "Who is that?" I asked. "Don't know. I just met her. Let's go. I'm hungry," she said, as if nothing had happened. Now I ask you, is that not the Kathy we all knew? To me, she was a Pied Piper of optimism and common sense, an idealist, always wondering why the world around us was so screwed up. She was an open book, the opposite of a politician, never seeking credit for the things she accomplished. She was fiercely loyal, loved unconditionally, was incapable of lying or deceit, always ready to help others, generous with her time, and craved adventure. She told me more than once that her dream was to pilot an airplane like her father, a Pan American captain. At least she got to ride in a helicopter for her 70th birthday. Kathy was not awed by fame. Thanks to my friendship with Butch Miles, the solo drummer for Count Basie's jazz band, we got to meet many of the most famous and talented Hall of Fame jazz musicians when the Basie Band and big-name performers came to South Florida. Butch always got us front-row tickets. I was starstruck to meet these legends, but Kathy just liked the music. One time we were waiting backstage while Butch prepared for his performance. We were talking for about 15 minutes to Sarah Vaughan, although I didn't recognize the Divine One until Basie's wife came in to give her a hug. I was blown away. After all, we were just chatting with one of the most famous jazz singers in history. Kathy just said, "I don't care who she is. She was a very nice lady." To my wife, a person's character, not fame or fortune, was all that mattered. Now, I don't want to make Kathy out as a saint. She had a temper and little tolerance for stupidity, laziness, selfishness, and slovenly appearance. She would bluntly call out anyone for committing these sins, including herself. Kathy was the first to take blame for smoking cigarettes. "I took a risk and paid the price," she said, adding, "I have no one to blame but myself. It cost her her life, and she was stubbornly stoic about it." She had a thing about scraggly hair on men. Just ask my grandson Alan, who learned the hard way. I can see her now. As she approaches the pearly gates, they slowly open to reveal a tall, fully bearded, and imposing Moses look-alike, wearing a flowing robe. "I am St. Peter, Catherine," the man says in a deep, rumbling voice. "Welcome to heaven." Kathy looks him straight in the eye and says, "You're looking pretty scruffy. When's the last time you shaved?" I fear the Almighty may have met his match. Throughout her life, Kathy had an eclectic career as an elementary school music teacher, church organist, private piano teacher, Eastern Airlines ground agent, zone manager and traffic controller, a cash crop horticulturist, children's book dealer, and a quilter. There are things about Kathy that very few know, even her closest friends. First, she never entered her quilts in a judging contest. To me, hers were well crafted, possibly better than many of the quilts that won awards. When I asked her why, she replied, "I don't believe that works of art should be judged against each other. Art is objective. It's in the eye of the beholder." She had no problem with others doing it. That was just her opinion. However, she had no qualms about entering other kinds of contests. In the mid to late 1970s, we were living in Boca Raton. Both of us belonged to a national civic organization called the JCs. It was a young adult version of the Rotary Club. Back then, the women had their own group. It was called the JC Auxiliary, or JCettes. One of their projects was like the Toastmasters and developed public speaking skills through a program called Speak Up. Each contestant wrote their own JC-themed speech and practiced delivering it to their local club members. When they voted for the best presentation, a winner was declared, and she qualified to enter the district competition. Kathy had never once spoken to a group of any kind, let alone in a contest, and I never did see her give the speech she wrote. But she titled it, "Do You Hear What I Hear?" But that year she won the club, district, and state championships, which qualified her to represent the state of Florida at the JC National Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. One of 50 speakers, she was now up against women who did public speaking for a living, like trial lawyers, radio and television personalities, and actors. Amazingly, Kathy came in 7th in the nation. She was obviously a natural, but once the congratulations were over, Kathy came home and never mentioned it again. Nor did she want me to crow about it, but I did, and still do to this day. After all, her internet address begins with chatty. When you get a chance, I would like you to Google Vial of Life. That's VIAL of life. You will see the symbol and many references to this nonprofit public service in all of the states and throughout the world. It's an emergency medical information concept that has saved literally hundreds of thousands of lives. I would also ask you to look up Vial of Life history on Wikipedia. There you will find this statement, and I quote, "It is unknown where and when the first Vial of Life started," unquote. Well, I'm here to tell you that it was Kathy who headed the team that started and named this project way back in the 1970s. Even won a state award for it, if memory serves me. Ask any retired Boca Raton firefighter, or Chief Jack Withrow, if he's still alive, and he will tell you that their department was first in the country to distribute the Vial of Life kits to a local community, all thanks to the Boca Raton JC Auxiliary. Yet Kathy never crowed about or took credit for it. Once it took off, she let it go. And now, to end this eulogy, I would like to give some advice to my 2 grandchildren, Alan and Caitlin, who are now adults. You are about to inherit a world so complex and fraught with challenges that my generation cannot begin to imagine. But I'm confident that you will both meet your future successfully, in large part because you were lucky enough to have your grandmother as a role model throughout your formative years. Just remember, people may pass, but spirits live forever. I ask you to honor your grandmother's life with your own. And no matter what the future brings, always ask yourself, what would Grandma do? She put the extra in ordinary, and her moral compass always pointed north. By any and every standard, Catherine Walker Mielke was the finest human being I've ever known.